With two teams at the top of the initial playoff rankings, the SEC is a must-see destination. With that as our compass, we've plugged two stops into our GPS. Our day trip takes us between the hedges as the nation's top-ranked team looks to go 9-0 for the first time since Herschel Walker was Georgia's top dog. Our primetime excursion directs us to Alabama, where Nick Saban's process has them ranked number 2 in the country and on course for a 4th straight playoff. With just over a month to go, the drive to Atlanta has the finish line in sight. Welcome to the Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes Benz. On tap for today, just the top 2 teams in the nation. In a little over an hour, number 1 ranked Georgia takes on South Carolina between the hedges. And in prime time, number 2 Alabama hosts 19th ranked LSU. And joining me as always, Brian Jones, plus the former head coach of the LSU Tigers, Les Miles. It is great to have you here in the saddle with us today, sir.
Adam, I'm enjoying it fully.
I can tell. How big a day is this? I know you went through so many of them, LSU and Alabama.
Well, it's a big game. Anytime 2 programs that are as closely aligned as this match each other, it's a big day. The opportunity to win and stay and control their own destiny, that's one point. You win this one, you go into the playoffs.
And Coach, there are certain games you circle because you know those are going to be those cold tub games. You're going to be sore after this one. You had an epic one back in 2011. 9-6 victory for your Tigers at the time. Take us back to that. What stands out?
Eric Reed makes a great play on a ball that should have gone to a tight end. This is the winning kick. And we accomplished a lot as a year. There were a 13-0 regular season football team, best in school history. Really a great day. Great. And Bryant-Denny Stadium, it's a great place to play, especially if you can take victory home with you.
And Bama got a shot at a rematch, of course, later on that year.
Talk about that.
I know, but hey, we're already talking about Georgia and Alabama meeting in the SEC championship.
No highlights. No highlights.
No, we don't have highlights of that.
No highlights.
We couldn't find them. But you have Georgia on top of the rankings, followed by Alabama. What was your initial impression here? Did you agree or disagree with this first batch?
Initially, I was surprised. Then you looked at their schedule. Alabama really hasn't played, except for their opener, a big game. Now, that puts Georgia, with the victory over Notre Dame, being the reason that they're number 1. And I buy it. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I think the committee got it correct here. You look at Georgia's schedule up to this point, and they played some very good competition, and they've been able to overcome that. Alabama, the bulk of their work starts tonight with LSU and moving forward.
And, of course, a lot of things changed last week when Penn State lost, TCU lost, and football games already underway. Let's get to some action already going on. Auburn very much alive in the SEC West as well. Top-ranked 2-loss team. The road team between Auburn and A&M has won all 5 of their SEC meetings. A&M looking to change that. Keith Ford gets in here, BJ, but Auburn fires back.
Right, they do fire back. How about 28 unanswered points? And Gus Malzahn, 6-0, or the Auburn Tigers under Malzahn coming off a bye. And not only does the offense get involved with Jarrett Stidham, 3 touchdowns on the day, you get the punt block here in the second quarter. So Auburn putting it on the Aggies. Back-to-back.
Up by 15 now, yeah. And they got Georgia next week. Now, meanwhile, Mississippi State, they've been rolling at home, but Dan Mullen getting a visit from UMass. Remember, he's from New England, and UMass. Isaiah Rodgers with the pick 6 here. And, Coach, how do the Bulldogs get burned on this right here?
Honestly, it's a simple play action, and they matched up with a linebacker. 41 should not be running with their wide receiver.
Well, Nick Fitzgerald should be running because he likes to do that, and he's got Mississippi State up by 7. It was tight with UMass last year, start of the 4th quarter now. Vanderbilt getting out of conference. They played Western Kentucky a couple years ago. Hilltoppers beat them. Ralph Webb getting in, BJ.
Yeah, Ralph Webb trying to get that bad taste out of his Commodore's mouth because they have not been able to close out ball games and get a W. But Mike White here takes the snap, 3-yard run for the Hilltoppers. As you said, knocked off Vandy a year ago. Did plenty of time for Kyle Shermer and somehow the ball is deflected, and Trey Ellis catches it for the touchdown. Luck, we'll take that.
Up by 11, start of the fourth. And then there's the situation with the Florida Gators and Randy Shannon taking over. He named Malik Zaire his starter earlier this week. We hadn't seen much of him, but all kinds of trouble for the Gators coach. The muffed punt, Missouri recovers it, sets up a touchdown a few plays later, and then Zaire gets into trouble.
Teams with distractions don't play just, like they're supposed to. And right now, going through a coaching change is a big deal.
Yeah, let's get to that. I mean, it's post-distraction now at this point, but everything we saw with Jim McElwain and Florida mutually parting ways, was that not only the fastest, but also the weirdest deterioration of a situation that you've encountered?
Yeah, no one could expect what happened there. Certainly, I guarantee the Florida people didn't as well. It's unfortunate because the players, I mean, you have a great team there that wants leadership, and that's what the athletic director has to be responsible to do.
Coach, let's take a look at Coach McElwain's numbers there at Florida. And you mentioned that they want leadership. Well, a lot of this is of his own volition. Yeah, he had back-to-back SEC titles, East titles, but he got thumped in both of those ball games. So that doesn't lend itself to a lot of confidence moving forward. And then you have what transpired this summer, how he handled a photo and some said it was him and it wasn't him. And yet he handled that poorly. And then these unsubstantiated claims of death threat. So a lot of this of his own doing, and so you have what you had there in Gainesville last week, a changing of the guard.
Yeah, it's again, the people that are hurt here are the players. You had a guy that's, pursued a job, worked hard, come from second team to first team, and then now there's a new coach, and they're dressing, and that coach has no experience with the journey that young man just went through.
Yeah, Randy Shannon's been around, of course. Now, you love the players. You've handled plenty of drama of your own when you were at LSU. Having spent most of a season now away from the game, are you ready to jump back into the fray wherever the drama may be?
Oh, absolutely.
And 640 muscles
I know what
in the
to
human
do on
body.
the inside of the lines.
No two of us
good.
are alike.
I've done it again and again and again.
Life made more effortless
certainly comfortable
through
with recruiting,
adaptability.
but those things that happen
The perfect
outside the
position
lines,
seat in the Lincoln Continental.
And sitting in the glorious table that I'm sitting in, I maybe need some work on it.
No, you stay you. We're actually going to have some of the best of Les Miles press conferences coming up in just a few minutes. Let's get back to the action now. Other top 25 action going on. Penn State and Michigan State both coming off their first conference losses. And amazingly, James Franklin 0-10 on the road in his career against ranked teams, BJ.
Yeah, but you see Brian Lewerke there with the pass to Darryl Stewart, a heck of a pass and catch. And Penn State's going to come back. Speaking of trying to get a bad taste out of about that second half versus Ohio State did not bode well for them. They've been in an hour and 15 weather delay, lightning there in East Lansing.
Meanwhile, Wisconsin, 2 wins away already from clinching that Big Ten West. Haven't played a ranked team, don't have one on the schedule. But Indiana's got a man wide open. It's 7-0 Hoosiers. Coach, is this going to happen? Alex Hornibrook going to save the day?
Yes.
And Jonathan Taylor's doing all right, by the way.
With 33 individual
he wasn't in there a little bit early, but he gets him in here. But it's only a 1-touchdown lead. They haven't been rolling teams, but they've been winning all their games up by 7. A reminder over on CBS Sports Network, it's ECU in Houston right now, followed by the second leg of the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy when Air Force hosts Army, capped with Colorado State, Wyoming. Time for a quick break here. When we come back, Rick Neuheisel and Aaron Taylor join us. We'll talk more about South Carolina and #1 Georgia when we continue on the Drive to Atlanta. The Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes Benz, is sponsored by Mercedes Benz, the best or nothing. AT&T. And by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Go big! They're not going to catch him. Touchdown. Oh, my goodness. The best games from the best conference. Watch every Saturday on the CBS Sports app.
All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at the Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes Benz, just over 70 miles west of where they'll play the SEC championship game. And we find our friends Rick Neuheisel, who normally sits in this chair, and Aaron Taylor, and they found their CBS Blazers for this day. Big one in Athens, Georgia.
Check that out, BJ. Check that out, my friend.
One of these days, I can dream.
Maybe we'll wear ours in Atlanta at the end of the season. Hey, guys, Georgia's #1 now for the first time in nearly a decade. What have you seen to indicate that since you've arrived in Athens, whether it's more #1 foam fingers or just a different vibe buzzing around the stadium?
Well, there's certainly an energy here, and everybody's really excited about what's going on. But I'll say this. I noticed a little bit of their coach, Kirby Smart, was a little bit more tense, and he actually alluded to us in the meetings that he's doing things this week that he normally doesn't have to do because of the weight of that #1. Now, I think he'll handle it fine, but I think a story is going to be how are his 18- and 19-year-old players going to handle it?
That's absolutely the case. Kirby Smart is the perfect guy because he comes from a program that has worn that tag of being #1 for so long. He knows exactly what the process is, but it's those young kids, and in particular, maybe the fan base. I've been walking around Athens. There are a lot of nervous trepidation amongst these fans wearing this #1 tag, not wanting to give it away anytime soon.
Rick, Aaron, the Georgia team is a veteran team. They have 11 defensive starters returning. They have 6 offensive starters returning. Can you see, when you watch practice or when you see how they mill around, is there leadership? Is there a visual difference in the veteran team that Georgia's putting on the field?
We talked to Mel Tucker just yesterday, Coach, and he was very adamant that he's got about 5, and he calls them glue guys. Guys that he counts on. Davin Bellamy's in that number. Guys that he counts on to run their position groups, making sure that everybody understands there's an accountability to this defense, and that's the cornerstone of this team. Obviously, everybody talks about the running backs, but if you look at Georgia and why they're in the situation they are, it's clearly because of the way they're playing defense.
And defensively, when you want to take a look at those guys, all 11 starters are in their 3rd year or greater. They are very seasoned. But on the other side of the ball, there's a couple freshmen and some young guys on the offensive line and at the quarterback position that are going to be having to possibly feel the weight of all that expectation. With that, I think, interestingly, how Georgia handles opportunities in close games, and they could get one today, will really say a lot about how this team finishes down the stretch.
Coach Miles, aren't you proud of Aaron? It always comes down to the offensive line with my man. Always.
Always. Hey, it always does, no matter what.
Yeah, Coach, I'm proud of you, too. Just like on Tuesday, they don't allow me to talk. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Aaron wins again. BJ had a good question, but we're out of time, guys. Sorry. We'll see you come kickoff. No more, Rick. You're done. You're done. Seriously. No guitar? No. Nothing. We'll see you in a few minutes. All right. When the Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes Benz, returns, we go behind the scenes of a Nick Saban press conference.
Nick Saban's doing a press conference, and people will drop what they're doing to see what he's saying.
I never said that. Nobody in this building ever said that. So where'd you come up with that? Just, you know, had a dream about it, or what?
Welcome back to the Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes Benz. Well, in case you haven't already noticed, Les Miles has always been comfortable around the media, especially in front of the camera. So we thought we'd take a look back at some of his more memorable press conference moments.
Remind everybody that it's Columbus Day, that all those of you that know Italians and like Italians are the people that might venture onto a ship and travel to explore and find new lands. This is your day. That was Death Valley. That was the place where opponents' dreams come to die. So I would get that little blade of grass, and the bottom end of it is the lighter, you know, stuff, and that's where I would bite. Okay, that's it. I mean, this is not like I'm having a meal. As we drove in, there was a big throng of people that, it was a faux pas that I didn't pronounce it or spell it correctly. It's not a hammer and a nail relationship. We were nailed. I wake up in the morning and I turn that film on. It's like reading a book, and it's exciting. And yeah, I don't read books, but but if I read books, it would be like reading a book. Hello? Hello, who is this? I think he's been drinking. Spectacular. spectacular group of men. You go find them, you throw your arms around them, you give them a big kiss on the mouth if you're a girl. Wow, what a game!
Oh, man. So you can imagine how much fun it's been watching you have press conferences for as long as you've been doing it, huh?
When you string those things together, they can be embarrassing. I just want you to know.
No, that's refreshing because I butcher the King's English all the time. I just want to know, have you eaten any good grass lately?
You know what? One of the teachers at my son's school said, hey, listen, do you have grass casseroles? No, absolutely. We've not eaten grass lately. Although, if I go onto the field, it's just kind of a natural thing. Hey, I want you to know, they caught it 3 times. I've been doing it for
forever.
Did you
even when you're an assistant?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you didn't know what to do when you played on turf, huh?
That's exactly right. Turf put a real cramp in my style.
All right, we'll try to find some good New York City wheatgrass for you before the day's over. Now, when it comes to a Nick Saban press conference, sometimes facing the Alabama coach as a member of the media can be as challenging as tackling a Saban coach team on the field, unless, of course, you know some of the tricks of the trade.
I think both. A Nick Saban press conference can be intimidating if you've never been in it, but if you understand how Nick Saban operates and you understand that what he's going to tell you maybe isn't meant for you, then it's a really eventful endeavor.
I will call Colorado State and tell them exactly what we want to do as soon as I get out of here. If I could tell you why you asked that question, hell, I wouldn't be up here. You guys can see better where you watch the game from than I can see where I watch the game from. What'd you think?
He's going to give you the answer that he wants to give you, totally unrelated to whatever question you might ask, because he wants to get a point across.
I could care less about the poll. I mean, what significance does a poll have right now? I mean, all we're talking about here is the challenge of our season and where are we going to be in the poll if we don't play well in the next 4 games.
He knows what's going to happen during the press conference beforehand, but nobody in the room quite knows.
I don't mind you asking a question, but I don't need to answer it.
Just when you have a few guys muffs and punts, do you give them extra reps in practice that next week, or do you just kind of let it be how it always is?
My 3 keys to a successful Nick Saban press conference are speak up,
ask an intelligent question, and you'll get an intelligent answer.
Don't challenge for the sake of challenging unless you absolutely need to.
I know you said Saturday after the game that the plan was to play 2 at some point in the first half. Is that still the same plan this week, or how do you plan to manage that?
We haven't decided how we're going to play the guys, and I wouldn't tell you if I did.
Number 2, nobody cares about your opinion. Nick Saban definitely does not care about your opinion.
I appreciate your opinion, you know. Hell, if I watch the film and I think it's so-so, maybe we'll try to hire your ass.
Don't be intimidated.
Don't be scared.
Don't make assumptions.
So I'd really rather not have any more questions about, is it okay to lose this game? It's never okay to lose a game.
And I wanted to ask about Jalen. He's done.
You should ask that first.
Avoid comparisons and hypotheticals. He avoids those questions.
Do you do what everybody else in the media does, just create some throw it on the wall and see what sticks? You know, all that stuff you write about how good we are, it's like taking poison, like rat poison.
And 3rd, have a sense of humor about it, because a lot of times he has a sense of humor about it too.
You know, so you can look at the glass half empty or half full, not to get to the Coke bottle.
If you can follow these 3 keys, I think you'll have a successful Nick Saban press conference.
All right, see y'all later.
Oh, some classic stuff there too, man. Coach, you like the rat poison. You like where he went there.
I thought it was awesome. To me, the players, when they hear rat poison, they know exactly what it means. He didn't even have to tell them. If it appears in the paper, if we talk about it in today's show, he says, hey, listen, that's already cured. There's nobody patting them on the back. That is all about preparation.
Now, how'd you guard against your team reading the press and the lofty headlines about them?
We fought the same battles. I just wish I'd have come up with rat poison.
What'd you come up with?
Well, I basically...
Is it safe for television?
I just know it's safe. It's easy for television. I just basically described the situation we're in, and that anything that other than what we do at a practice field or what we do in our building or how we operate as a team, other than that, there is no say they have on victory. And we want to play for victory, and that's just who we are.
Yeah, and neither team's going to be distracted today because of the opponent. And as for game 2 of our doubleheader, number 2 Alabama hosting number 19 LSU in prime time. The Tide leads the SEC in scoring, rushing, and total offense. They also top those categories on defense. With 6 straight wins in this rivalry now, Alabama Alabama's owned it of late. After a rocky start, though, the Tigers had what some have called this gut check meeting. Nothing but wins have followed, and it may be a giant hill to climb, but LSU still has a chance to claim the SEC West title if they can keep it going and get it done on the road. Coach, what's going to be so key for them to do differently than they did last year in this game?
Darius Geis has got to have the same style of game against that he had at Ole Miss against Alabama. He's got to come off. He's got to get loose 3 times. Defensively, they have not talked about Dave Aranda's defense. Our defense, their defense, I should say, is going to be a player in this game. And then just play like Tigers. You know, have the confidence and the understanding that you can go to Bryant-Denny and take victory.
Well, yeah, play like Tigers, you're right. Go after some raw meat, and that's the Alabama running backs, and it's going to be tough, and Jalen Hurts, of course. But this LSU Tigers defense has played well. The last 3 fourth quarters, they've only allowed 8 points, so they have to bring that type of tenacity to this ball game, and they have to come up with some type of consistent offensive movement versus tough Bama D.
Yeah, defense was great last year. It was scoreless into the 4th quarter, and the Tigers are 8-6 in their last 14 visits to Bryant-Denny Stadium. When we return, our SEC headlines and more. Stick around. The Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes Benz, rolls on. All right, we're back with headlines from the SEC this week, and in reaction to Georgia's top spot in the initial playoff rankings, Kirby Smart taking a page from Nick Saban's playbook, as we heard the guy saying earlier, saying it really means nothing right now. It really nothing more than a distraction. Alabama defensive end and Louisiana native Isaiah Buggs claims he has been the recipient of horrible messages from Louisiana fans. Buggs tweeting, "How could you wish such bad things on players? Like, I just don't get it." Responding to a report that right tackle Brett Kendrick played the entire second half of the Kentucky game with a concussion, head coach Butch Jones told reporters, "We would never, ever knowingly put a student-athlete in harm's way." And as for Jones, it has gone from bad to worse. It feels like that every week. Fans have started now an empty Neyland campaign calling for a boycott of home games until Butch Jones is fired. I mean, look, every time they lose a game, you think it's his last one. Coach, I know you were in a similar situation for a while. I remember the fans rallying for you a couple years ago before that A&M game, but this is a tough time for Butch Jones.
Yeah, all of the criticism is just kind of segmented. You know, it wants the same outcome. The issue about concussion, that should be a protocol. It comes from the medical staff. I promise you there was never a time that we put a guy that was injured, certainly with question of concussion, back on the field. You know, I think Butch has to deal with some of these things in a hard, fast way. And certainly we're hopeful that this team can salvage the end of the season.
You can be as hopeful as you want because he's lost the fan base, he's lost the former players, and now there are allegations by a legendary former player, Anton Davis, a #1 pick, All-American there at Tennessee back in my day. He was the coordinator of their Vols for Life program. Now he's alleging that Butch Jones intimidated and abused him. He has left that post as the head of that program there at Tennessee, so it's getting worse for Butch Jones and the Volunteers.
And some of it's his own doing when it comes to what you're talking about. And when it comes to losing games, losing close games, they are winless in the SEC right now.
They are a big-time program, and they deserve the opportunity to beat an Alabama and win championships. And that's...
Well, they may deserve it. They're not getting it done, Coach. And we're not sitting here trying to push him out. But when you have allegations after allegations coming out against your program, where there's smoke, there's fire.
And we will see, and of course, a major story and potentially a major opening there in Knoxville. Coming up next here, it is State Farm College Football Today. 30 more minutes with Les.
Whatever it's at. Jalen turns it upfield. Touchdown, Alabama.
Touchdown, Nick Chubb. Wow, what a move.
This program is built on 2 pillars, physicality and toughness. It's what we're about. They just keep chopping.
It's Alabama. College football doesn't get much better than this. Fights his way all the way. Touchdown. for it, but how do you stop it?
Fires.
And there he goes. Touchdown.
Well, this is how legends are made.
Hello once again, everybody. I'm Adam Zucker, and welcome to State Farm College Football Today. Coming up next, it's South Carolina and #1 Georgia. And in the second game of our doubleheader, it's 19th ranked LSU and #2 Alabama in prime time. Joining me once again are Brian Jones and the former head coach of those LSU
He's working
Tigers.
over here.
He's busy.
Right there.
He's busy. He's a working man. Are you having fun with us, Les?
Having a blast. This is it's everything I ever thought it was.
Oh, good.
Put me in, Coach.
And nothing more. BJ, LSU, Alabama, leading as both ranked 12th straight year.
Yeah, it should be huge. I get goosebumps just thinking about this ball game, and it starts with Alabama and Jalen Hurts. This guy's cooler than a polar bear's toes, Coach. I mean, he's second leading rusher on his team behind Damian Harris. He's got 9 touchdowns via air, 1 interception, 572 on the ground. And that defense only giving up 66 yards via the ground. They're as stout as they've ever been. Now, LSU, can that running game do something?
LSU, 270 yards, but I tail back against Ole Miss. He needs to have a big day in this one. Danny Etling has managed the game and done extremely well. I think it's 9 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Yes.
So he's doing the things. And Danny Etling has more mobility than you would think.
You better use it.
Yeah, Matt Canada's got to earn it today. Their offensive coordinator this year. Those are your guys, Les. But as for our first game, Georgia. #1 in the country because they can run the ball really well and they play some great defense, Coach. Is it that simple?
I think that is a recipe that is true and will be that way for time, okay? Run the football, play great defense. Don't turn it over.
Yeah, and they've got the guys to do it. With Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, BJ, and that swarming defense. We've been calling them Bama East or Bama Light, but they're on top. They're on top of the rankings, BJ.
They definitely are, but Will Muschamp and his Chargers are playing pretty well. Jake Bentley, after losing a great weapon in college football, Deebo Samuel, they picked up the pace. He's completing 61% of his passes, 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and the big number, second in the SEC in turnover margin at +8. They need multiple turnovers in this ball game between the hedges.
Yeah, and they've had to shake off some major injuries as well. And let's check out both teams warming up live in our eye test between the hedges and starting with Georgia and that young quarterback, BJ.
Yeah, when you can run the rock, who needs to pass? Jake Fromm and his UGA team, they've completed less than 10 passes a game in 5 games. 11 total, count them, 11 total versus Tennessee and Florida.
And it is that pounding rushing attack, a top 10 rushing offense, and that 1-2 punch of Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, BJ.
That's right, #1 in the SEC in rushing attempts per game, 3rd nationally. And how about Sony Michel? He's embarking on another 1,000-yard season, would be his 2nd there as a Georgia Bulldog, and his numbers are better than they've ever been, average about 8 yards a carry. And Lorenzo Carter, what a freak. This guy plays the cello. Can you guys believe that? But he said coming to the season he wanted to be more like a savage, and he's doing that. He leads them in sacks, 2nd in the country, and fumble recoveries. And his buddy at that linebacker position is Roquan Smith, the anchor of that defense. We can focus on Carter as much as you want because he's 6'6", 250, so we continue to talk about him. But Smith is the man. He'll make you jump like a hiccup, Coach.
Yeah, those single-digit numbers. Watch out for them. And facing this South Carolina team, Coach, that's 6-2, but they've been outgained by over 350 yards on the season, but Will Muschamp has them looking good.
No, yeah, Will Muschamp has an opportunity to take South Carolina where they haven't been. They've won a series. I mean, they're 6-2 with the opportunity to do some special things.
And Jake Bentley's getting old now, BJ.
He is, so he still looks like he's about 15. But last week he had his first career rush TDs. He had 2, 19-yarder and an 11-yard scamp versus Vandy, and he was second leading rusher at 47 yards. The leading rusher was A.J. Turner. How about this young man taking over for a hurt Rico Dowdle. Dowdle had a fractured fibula and career best 121 yards last week for A.J. Turner. Runs a lot bigger than he is, 184-pound running back. And Hayden Hurst, Adam.
Yeah, one of his most reliable targets, who now has the school record for career catches by a tight end. Let's see if he can have a major role today. And, of course, we'll see what the South Carolina defense can do. This is their first ranked opponent of the year, although one of their previous opponents, NC State, who they beat at the beginning of the season, is now ranked and in contention for the ACC title. All right, let's get to some action now already underway, although they've had to stop it a couple times. Penn State and Michigan State, both 4-1 in the Big Ten after losing their first conference games last week. And Brian Lewerke coming off a record day and back to worky.
Yeah, a record-setting day and a loss in overtime there to Northwestern. What was that, 3 overtimes last week?
Yep.
And here you see Trace McSorley finding some time in the pocket, something he didn't enjoy a week ago versus Ohio State. And he gets the touchdown pass to Saeed Blacknall.
All right, Wisconsin trying to stay undefeated. They're on the road. They haven't faced a ranked opponent yet, but Indiana's Richard Lego says, let's go, coach.
Yeah, this is a beautiful, play action. They roll off to his right and throws it back. Obviously, they saw something on film that was going to get that open.
And Wisconsin, by the way, in white jerseys. So Alex Hornibrook to Quentin Cephas there to take the lead. Jonathan Taylor, you've seen this before in the Wisconsin jersey.
It's a big horse, man. That is a real dude.
And he's stopping eventually. Don't stand in front of that thing. 38-17, Wisconsin looking good at this point. Let's get to the day in the SEC. Auburn and A&M, the road team always wins. BJ, don't tell the Tigers.
Do not tell them that, and don't tell their special teams that they can't make a play, because they do right there. Big punt. They would go on with 28 unanswered points. How about Gus Malzahn? Since he's been at the helm, 6-0 after a bye and a beautiful pass there to carry on by Jarrett Stidham to Darius Slade, and then it's Kerryon Johnson carrying the day because no Cameron Petway.
Offensively, they're running the football and throwing the football with balance.
One of 3 teams over 220 in both per game. Someone's going to be hearing the noise for sure. And Dan Mullen, how about, he's from New Hampshire, but UMass comes to Starkville, and this is happening. Not only the pick 6, but look at this, to Andy Isabella behind the defense. Coach Miles is just laughing.
I just want you to know, Andy Isabella can get behind the defense.
Nick Fitzgerald goes in. Mississippi State does have an 11-point lead with under 5 minutes to go. Vanderbilt stepping out of conference. Ralph Webb stepping into the end zone against Western Kentucky.
Where was that earlier in the year? He's been losing ball game after ball game in SEC competition, but here versus Western Kentucky, look like they may be just fine, but we'll see. Mike White with the snap runs 3 yards, and then here comes Kyle Sherman. Clean pocket, nice pocket. I don't know about the pass, but there was a lot of opposing jerseys there, but they got the deflection and the touchdown.
Yeah, the quarterback doesn't care as long as it's 7 for the good guys.
Yeah, those dads in the NFL, so yeah. Florida. Oh, man. Post Jim McElwain. Randy Shannon taking over, makes Malik Zaire the starter. He looked pretty good in mop-up duty last week, but everything going wrong. Brandon Powell can't handle the punt. Missouri recovers. They score a few plays later. And Zaire...
Difficult guy. There's timing and chemistry that's not fixed. And so Felipe Franks comes back in, and he's not, right at home in the back end of the game.
No, and Malik Davis is hurt. Everybody's hurt. Suspensions as well. 42-16 right now. A reminder over on CBS Sports Network, it's ECU and Houston right now, followed by the second leg of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy when Air Force hosts Army, capped with Colorado State and Wyoming. And never miss a moment of college football with the CBS Sports app. Every play, every story, and every highlight right as they happen. Download the CBS Sports app now. When we come back, it's Bedlam as the guys make their picks in our Saturday Spotlight. You are watching State Farm College Football today on CBS.
The NFL's top defense, Denver, battles the NFL's hottest team, Philadelphia. Then Alex Smith and Kansas City take on Dak Prescott and Dallas. Sunday on CBS.
How about Nick Chubb? Back to pre-injury form, needs just 115 rushing yards to pass Bo Jackson for 4th in SEC history. Chubb and Sony Michel are on pace to become the first pair of Georgia tailbacks to reach 1,000 yards in the same season. On the other side, South Carolina's Jake Bentley having a strong sophomore season, completing over 61% of his passes. He's tossed 13 touchdowns. Bentley also found the end zone twice last week against Vandy with his legs, and he's the topic of today's 20-second drill.
Jake Bentley, University of South Carolina quarterback. I like any food. I'll eat anything, but hibachi makes my stomach hurt, and I don't want that. I have 7 people in my family. We're always getting fights every time we play a game outside or a card game or anything.
He did pretty well. I mean, you're a veteran of the 20-second drill yourself.
Oh, I am absolutely a veteran. It'd take me an hour and a half to say all that.
Yeah, it gets a little violent around here sometimes too, Coach. So just so you're warned.
Yeah, hopefully Georgia didn't send those guys to the hibachi place last night based on that. Let's take a look at some of the biggest games now in our Saturday Spotlight presented by Chick-fil-A, starting with our primetime matchup in Tuscaloosa, LSU and Alabama. After that crushing loss to Troy, the 19th-ranked Tigers have won 3 straight, including 2 over ranked teams. A healthy Darius Geis had 276 rushing yards his last time out, the 3rd 250-yard outing of his career. The Tide has outscored their opponents, though, by more than 33 a game and have trailed on the scoreboard for only 2 minutes and 26 seconds all season, Coach. Remember, this was 0-0 going into the 4th quarter last year. The world expects you to take LSU now against Alabama.
The world is going to be happy because they're going to get up in the morning and say, yeah, Les Miles is still taking LSU. The reason, Darius Geis, expect him to have a big day. He wants to determine that he's one of the top backs in the country. I expect Danny Etling still manages the game, but Arden Key and Dave Aranda on defense,
it's going to happen.
They're going to believe they can win.
Well, Coach, the world's going to be upset with me like they usually are because I'm going to go with Bama. You got a few freshmen on that O-line for Matt Canada they're going to be blocking for Geis and Etling, and they're going to get a nice education, that Bama D.
All right, there you go. Crazy day in the ACC now. The top 2 teams in the Coastal meeting, number 13 Virginia Tech and number 10 Miami. The Canes look to improve to 8-0 for the first time since 2002, but the victories have not come easy. They've won their last 4 by a grand total of 18 points. The Hokies allow just 11.5 points a game, second fewest in the nation. A Virginia Tech win would give them the edge in the Coastal Division, BJ.
Yeah, Virginia Tech is playing pretty well, and Miami had these slow starts, Coach, and I think if they get off to a slow start here, it could get late early in this ball game. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech because of that Bud Foster defense, the way they just shut down Duke last week, held them to their lowest total offense on the season. Not saying Duke's a juggernaut, but still, it was impressive.
No, I agree with you, and I like Justin Fuente at the head coaching spot. I think he's ready and had been in some of those games, and Bud Foster is the reason I'm picking. I believe that Mark Richt will get it going, but I like Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Mark Richt trying to stay undefeated. Now, 2 of the 4 one-loss teams atop the Big 12 are squaring off. Their rivals, it's Bedlam, number 5 Oklahoma, number 11 Oklahoma State. The Sooners have won 14 consecutive road games, not going to be intimidated by loud thumping of the paddle people. The quarterback for most of those wins, Baker Mayfield. He has thrown at least 2 touchdown passes in 21 straight games. He loves the spotlight, longest streak in Big 12 history. But the Cowboys QB is also a stat stuffer. Mason Rudolph broke 4 OSU career records his last time out, leads the nation in passing yards, Coach. Who's got the horses here?
You have to be able to make a decision, not just based on fact, but an emotion. And I promise you this, the Oklahoma State Cowboys are going to play well in this game. Here's why. They're playing in T. Boone Pickens Stadium, and every time they score, they run out this big stallion called
Bullet.
Bullet. That's exactly right.
See, your emotions taking over. That's why you're wrong about
How
this.
long were you there?
No. Long enough to see Bullet out there a number of times.
Is Bullet going to run out of energy? They're going to run
exactly.
him.
Won't worry about. No, worry about Mason Rudolph.
Oklahoma's going to win this ball game, and I'm believing in that defense I saw after the first quarter there in Norman last week. They gave up 20 points to Texas Tech, then they only gave up 7. Oklahoma wins.
All right, that'll be a fun one. Meanwhile, the top 2 teams in the Pac-12 South, number 22 Arizona and number 17 USC. What you don't see is BJ riding a horse. The Trojan Sam Darnold gets most of the pub, but Ronald Jones often the key here. The junior notched his 2nd career 200-yard rushing game his last time out. The Wildcats, they were projected to finish last in the South, and now they're playing for the division lead, and Khalil Tate is the reason why. 840 rushing yards in 4 games, and an unprecedented 4 straight Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week honors. Wow. They're supposed to distribute that thing around, but no one can stop him.
Yeah, no one can bridle him, Coach. And I'm going to go with that other horse, Traveler, there at USC, because SC looked like the SC of old last week in the desert versus Arizona State, a team that was riding pretty high. Ronald Jones, you just mentioned him. This defense will have its work cut out for him trying to stop Khalil Tate, but Tommy Trojan wins.
I agree. Sam McDonald's going to have a tremendous day.
That's a new burger joint.
It's correct. And we're talking about speed. I mean, the one thing that great tailback Khalil Tate can have is speed. That defense will have the same.
Yeah, we mentioned enough farm animals, so that's where we went.
McDonald's, now McDonald's.
USC, 14 straight home games. Now, back to the first game of our doubleheader, and earlier John Schriffen caught up with Georgia head coach Kirby Smart.
Coach, what a week it's been. Your team is now ranked #1 in the country. You admitted to us in our production meeting yesterday that some of your younger guys like to be on social media, listen to all the talk. How do you feel like your team has handled the extra attention?
Well, I think all our guys like to be on social media. The difference is our younger guys may be affected by it more. So we've had the older players talk to the younger guys about things they've been through, its task at hand. That's playing a really good South Carolina football team today.
You told us when you first came here to Georgia on your recruiting trip, you met Will Muschamp. Ever since, you guys have been very close friends. Even your programs are built very similarly. What concerns you most about this South Carolina team?
Well, you got a great quarterback. Anytime you got a quarterback, you got a chance. He understands the game. He knows how to play. They've got a really good defensive football staff and defensive football team, and their special teams all around is one of the best in the SEC. So they're very balanced, and they got a good team.
Coach, good luck today.
Thank you.
All right, the coaches putting their friendship on hold for a few hours. Now, only 3 of the last 10 meetings between South Carolina and Georgia have been decided by more than 11 points, and one of those, a 52-20 blowout win by the Bulldogs between the Hedges 2 seasons ago. So Dog Nation has arrived early to Sanford Stadium. Yeah, hoping to see the #1 team in the country dominate once again. Jake Fromm is 7-0 as a starter since taking over for the injured Jacob Eason. Despite completing the fewest passes among SEC regular starters, the true freshman has done everything he's been asked and has proven to be quite the insurance policy for the #1 team in the country.
Has your quarterback been injured by Appalachian State? Are you looking for some insurance? If so, it's going to begin with a quote.
That kid's stepping up, starting to play. He's a good leader. Jake Fromm, great job tonight.
These quotes are not about insurance. They're about Jake Fromm. Or, as he's known at the University of Georgia, Jake Fromm, StateFarm. Hey, as every quarterback knows, accuracy is important.
Fromm works from under center. Hand off to Chubb, toss it back to Fromm. Oh, he's got a man deep. They go flea flicker, and there's Godwin. He caught it at the 20. He veers left. Touchdown! Touchdown!
For a team in the SEC, quarterback Jake Fromm is the best insurance policy one could imagine. A true freshman, he's come off the bench to lead his team to the top spot in the playoff rankings. It isn't just how he's playing, though. It's who he's playing for. Jake Fromm is the ultimate homeowner's policy, playing for his home state of Georgia. For this good neighbor to walk off the field in high school and lead the team out at Sanford Stadium in the fall is the stuff of dreams. The 1 in a million, act of God type occurrence that actuaries and accountants try to tabulate and can't quite find the odds of it happening. It's a scenario few could have seen coming, but everyone gets to experience. So today, think about insurance, how important it is, and how you never know where it's going to come from. This has not been a promotion for State Farm or their spokesperson, Jake from State Farm. Any resemblance in face, name, or pants is purely coincidental and is not the intention of the SEC on CBS. All rights reserved. Check your playbook. Closed Sundays.
Oh, that's good stuff. Check your playbook. And he was studying the playbook all spring, knowing he was likely to be a backup, and instead now, BJ, right place, right time, #1 team in the country.
No khakis for my man, and no, he's not hideous. And while Georgia, they throw the fewest amount of passes in the conference and maybe in the nation, when they do throw it, this guy has been on point. You're right. You mentioned his film study. He's much wiser than his years, Coach.
He's a freshman who came on and is being managed extremely well. There's some things he can do, and he can do as good as any in the country. But they're calling those plays, and great job by Kirby.
Yeah, and the only thing maybe to throw in any disclaimer is that he hasn't had, that big clutch spot or a big comeback to lead. They had the win at Notre Dame, but he's done everything that's asked of him, and so far it hasn't had to be too much, but it's something to watch. And Fromm is a big reason why Georgia is the only Power 5 school to score on every red zone trip this season. The Dogs are 31 for 31 with 22 touchdowns, with Fromm throwing for 7 and running for 3, including this one that BJ breaks down now in today's Red Zone, presented by Verizon. B?
Yeah, let's check this out, Coach and Adam. In the Tennessee ball game, we're going to have a tight formation. The extra team is aligned tight there on the right, and you're going to have a bunch set on the left. Now, the Dogs are anticipating a man coverage, and you're supposed to get a shallow cross and a rub by the tight end out of this bunch set right there at that mesh point. But what occurs is, one, Tennessee is in a zone defense. They're playing quarters, so that eats up the pattern. And the shallow cross, he goes too deep. He doesn't come shallow enough at that mesh point, so you don't get the rub. But Jake Fromm, smart enough to tuck it and run and get in the end zone. So he's shown that he knows how to adjust when the throw isn't there.
Yeah, he pushes that play a little wider. He knew what he had in front of him. He made a play, went into the boundary to make a play that's something that he could see. It was covered up. Yep. He went and took it. Just really good quality play. And in the red zone, you must execute. If you don't get sevens, it's a misery.
I agree.
If you get threes, it's good news, but you have to execute.
Sure, and they keep doing it, and he knew when to use those legs. So we're getting closer to kickoff of our SEC doubleheader, the top two teams in action today, right here on CBS.
Chubb explodes through the hole.
Hand off to Chubb, toss it back to Fromm, flea flicker, touchdown!
Over the top, touchdown, Alabama!
Yes, thank you.
Quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa know-how.
State Farm College Football Today is sponsored by State Farm, here to help life go right. Napa, quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa know-how. And by Verizon, the best network and the best unlimited. All right, just a few minutes away here from Georgia. #1 Georgia and South Carolina kicking off our SEC on CBS doubleheader. Meantime, scores from around the country. This one's not changing for a while. It's going to be about 2 hours at the earliest before they continue because of lightning delays in East Lansing. Penn State on top of Sparty 14-7. Hey, Wisconsin was down 10-0.
Didn't you say that was going to be close?
I thought this was going to be the day. The Badgers, though, finished 45-7. Jonathan Taylor, another big day, 183 yards on the ground.
Oof.
And the road team always wins between these two as A&M falls to 5-4 now. Auburn against Georgia next week, 42-27 the final. Jarrett Stidham was precise, 20 of 27, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns there. And, hey, maybe Dan Mullen's been reading some Dan Mullen headlines, but Mississippi State wins it 34-23 over UMass, who slips to 2-7. These are the 5 undefeated teams in the FBS. And, gentlemen, with Georgia and Alabama seemingly on this collision course for Atlanta, if the SEC championship is close and you have an undefeated team and a one-loss runner-up, do you see a one-loss runner-up getting into the 4-team playoff over the rest of these undefeated teams, Coach?
At this point in time, who cares? It's all going to be at the back end. If Wisconsin continues to win and puts themselves in a position to play for a championship, yes, if they win the championship. If they don't, now, but for this next week, no. It'll go as is.
Yeah, Coach, I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of football left to be played. And if you have a one-loss runner up there in the conference championship game for the SEC, I don't believe they get in. It depends on what these other conferences do, especially if you have one losses there. And right now, of course, Georgia focusing on what happens in exactly 12 minutes, kickoff against South Carolina. South Carolina, they've rushed for at least 150 in their last 3, and they've won all 3. They have to do that more in this one. Indeed. Georgia and South Carolina between the hedges in Athens coming up next. And a reminder, it's Army and Air Force coming up over on CBS Sports Network. Game time for the Gamecocks and the #1 Dogs is right after this message and a word from your local station. You have been watching State Farm College Football Today on CBS.
Shamar Moore Star.